Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Thursday. It's sunny. It's episode 52. It's Allister. It's Geoff. It's the Real Deal Pod. And we are back here with you today with some smoking hot information, boy. Oh, man, it matches the weather. Spring is here. Summer's almost here, and Easter is just around the corner, baby. The Easter Bunny comes this weekend. My man Geoff, how you doing, buddy? Is the Easter Bunny coming to your house?
My girlfriend's coming to my house, so I think that's probably the next the next
The
best.
next best thing? She's the next best thing to the Easter Bunny? No,
She's
man.
better than the Easter Bunny.
That's it, buddy.
She's way better than Easter.
That's right. So how you doing, buddy? How was Mexico?
Yeah, Mexico was nice. It was hot. Got sunburnt my shoulders the first day, sunburnt my head the same day. Um, you just don't learn.
You didn't put the suntan lotion up top there?
I did, but I always think the Chinese don't burn. And I'm like, every year I burn, and it's just like, do you not learn? But
It's funny. We do the same thing. Black don't burn. Apparently, that's not true. Apparently, black people, we burn. I didn't know that.
this is a real ignorant thing. I have a really good friend that's really dark,
Yeah,
and he's like, I'm like, you don't tan.
yeah.
And he's like, and then he lifts up his shorts, and I'm like,
Shorts.
holy jeez. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I thought you just couldn't get any darker than you are. And because he was like Nigerian dark.
Right. Yeah.
So, like dark, and yeah, Lord and behold, he had his tan line was just as heavy as mine. I'm like, holy geez. So
No, it's hilarious. My wife will tell you.
Mexico was great. No, it was Manulife sent us down there. There was about 123 brokers, about 198 people, including their spouses. Went to a secrets resort in Cancun. It was just a 5-star event, right?
That's
So
nice.
always nice to kind of rub shoulders with your peers that are in your industry, and just to learn from them, and just to realize that, hey, like these are some pretty heavy hitters, and they're just normal people too, right? So
That's always nice to hear, right? Is that, you think about these people as that like they do so well in their business, so they might carry this air about them, or they might think of themselves in a certain way, or might not be as willing or open to have discussions with me because they're at a level that I'm not. And then when you get to sit down and meet with them and realize that they're just like me, and they're, happy to share and happy to talk and happy to have fun, it's great.
yeah, in my experience, I've found that true affluent people are very humble and are always willing to share. It's the
Yes.
ones that I always like to say that phrase, lipstick on a pig, where, where there is that image or that persona that's out there, and for whatever reason, those, they're never what they appear to be, and those ones sometimes give you a vibe that just isn't very friendly.
Yeah.
But when you peel back those onion layers, it's like, okay, well, what you think you're trying to portray is really not what it actually is. So I don't know. My experience is anyone that is a really true high net worth, usually the people you don't even recognize,
Yep.
and they're usually the people that are the most willing to share.
No, it's super true. They're one of the guys, they're just sitting there in the polo shirt and the Wrangler jeans, just sitting back and looking like they're the next door neighbor that's just been mowing the lawn. But like you said, they're willing to sit down and share everything that they know. They're just excited to help anybody learn. And that is the point. True affluent people, true leaders. I always just call them true leaders, right? They're always willing to share, because it's not even just affluent people, true affluent people. They're not always willing to share. I call them new money people. New money people never want to share because they don't want anybody to catch up to their money, right? Old money people, they're always willing to share,
Yeah.
right? They're always willing to help people grow.
Yeah. I like the saying, I'm part of a group called Business Network International, BNI, and they have a saying called giver's gain, right?
Yeah.
And I really believe in that, is that if you give, you're going to gain
Yep.
in some way. That could be in wisdom, that could be in financing, that could just be in overall knowledge. But if you're willing to give it, you're going to gain it. So I really, really like that.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's actually I that must be where one of my mentors got that from, because they'd always told me, Alistair, you can get everything you want by helping other people, by helping enough people, sorry, get what they want.
Yeah.
If you help enough people get what they want, you can get whatever you want. And it's
Yep.
true.
Yep.
That is a true thing, right?
Yep.
Pay it forward.
Try it
Amazing,
out, people. Try it out. Give it,
right?
give it a
Right?
game.
Well, man, while you were gone, we had a lot of stuff going on within the market, and then you get back and they go and do something that I think we've been saying we didn't believe that they were going to do. They, for what, for the first time, what is it, the past seven?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. April
seven.
16th, April 16th, our Bank of Canada
Yeah.
met once again and did
Pause
not
the rates.
to move the overnight lending rate, which is the direct impact on our prime rate.
Yeah.
Now, again, it depends on who you talk to when that came out, because if you talk to some economists, it was kind of a 50-50 split. Like 50% of the economists believed that nothing was going to happen, and 50% of the economists believed that we were going to drop a quarter of a point. So, we're going to jump into this a little bit more, I think, as we get into it, and just kind of have those reasons why. And also important to know, guys, that the Bank of Canada meets 8 times a year.
Right.
And our next Bank of Canada meeting, I believe, is like June 4th. So there's going to be a little bit of a break. And depending on what is going to be going on with the tariffs, and depending on what's going on with our inflation and that whole mix of ingredients that affects the overnight lending rate, it is again expected that we're going to see a rate drop come June. But like we've been talking about, Alistair, like things always move from
Yeah.
from one from one point to the next, and it doesn't seem that we can get anything steady. And again, why is there so much instability? Why did the Bank of Canada hold fast? Again, tariffs.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I thought that was interesting that they were talking about was the neutral rate. And they were saying that 2.75 was going to be the new neutral rate. And then they were saying that it might become too restrictive. So, Geoff, because you are our mortgage guru, what does the neutral rate mean? Like, for the listeners, what does the neutral rate mean?
You know what? That's a great question. I know that when we talk about that 2.75%, that's the overnight lending rate.
Lending rate. Okay.
So that could be a benchmark as far as what is buoyant to what kind of they want to sit at. So again, I'm just thinking out loud. A neutral rate could possibly mean that it sits there, and that's kind of where they want it to be, as it's neutral. And as things move to the better or move for the worse, our overnight lending rate will move accordingly.
Right.
So again, important to understand, folks, is that right now our benchmark rate is held at 2.75%, which I guess they're going to be calling that the neutral rate. That is not the prime rate. Remember, the prime rate is the rate that the lenders borrow, that you borrow the money from the lenders, which typically is about 2.2 to 2.5% higher than the overnight lending rate. And that's called the prime rate.
Right.
So again, the Bank of Canada, as of April, decided not to move the overnight lending rate.
Yep.
Which they have not done for the last 7 consecutive Bank of Canada meetings, because in each of those meetings we had a quarter of a point cut from that benchmark rate. And again, people will ask why. And again, it's largely to do with inflation. It's largely to do that global risk is still prevalent, and largely due to Trump's trade tariffs, and that's creating a lot of uncertainty here in Canada as well as in the U.S.
That's, I think, yeah, that's been the biggest, of course, the biggest reason why these tariffs have just been crushing everybody in terms of just the uncertainty to the global markets. We've seen the volatility. We saw what happened. What was it? Last Thursday? Last Thursday when he bottomed out the global markets before then walking back everything that he had done, and then the markets had seen the largest spike that they had ever seen.
Yeah, again, I don't
Right?
know. I have to Google fact this, but they also say now there are some suspicions on inside trading with
100%. That's what I
right?
always
So,
have believed that this is. That's what I believe a lot of this is manufacturing the stock market, is manipulating the stock market in order for gains, and then to just level it out and go back to normal for a little bit again.
right. I
Yeah.
wanted to jump back into the neutral rate because you got my wheels turning. The
Yes.
neutral rate is the sweet spot, not too hot,
Yeah.
causing inflation, not too
Yeah.
cold, causing recession. And at the neutral rate, the economy is growing at a sustainable pace with stable inflation and full employment. It's a long-term guide for central bankers to gauge whether their current policy is tight, loose, or just right. So, like I said, it's a flotation.
Is a flotation. So there we go. So they were talking about 2.75 now possibly becoming too restrictive, right? Meaning now that we would have to bring that rate lower in order to have I guess, for the economy to move smoothly now.
Right. And, and
What's the,
again, and again, that benchmark rate
yeah,
at 2.75. And again, when we always talk about the prime rate, that's the prime rate that you as borrowers, you as the general public borrowing money, that's the rate that you need to focus on, not the benchmark
right.
rate or the overnight lender rate. It's the prime rate.
Prime rate.
So when
right.
you hear it, just again, you're not expected to always know what that prime rate is. It's about 2.2 to 2.5% higher. Just using that as a guideline, that's the rate that you're paying. That's the rate the bank is lending the money out at. So just like we always said, is that if our country goes into a recession, and this is where we talk about the tariffs uncertainty, we all agree that if there is a tariff war or trade war, we are going to see here in Canada an expected recession. And if that recession happens, then that benchmark rate, which is currently being held at 2.75, and I guess they're being called the neutral policy rate, that rate will actually drop because, again, the only way to stimulate the economy is to spend money. The only way people feel comfortable spending money is when it comes at a low interest cost.
Yeah. And that's true. And I think another thing that we lost sight of maybe is we're seeing a strong loonie as well.
Yeah, I think nobody's talking about that.
That's what I'm saying. Nobody's talking about that, and we're seeing our currency now getting stronger.
What is it now? 35 cents to the American dollar?
Yeah, it went up 0.44%, I believe it was. But still, it was brutal. It was.
I was being facetious there for a second. 35. No. A Canadian dollar is worth 35 cents in the US.
Yes. Okay, no.
Which is not true.
That's not true. Sorry. No, but what are we at right now? Is it
I think the Canadian dollar is I want to say it's like
76 cents?
I think that's actually quite high still.
Is it?
I always like to use ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT say? It makes it so much easier. Let me find out while you keep on talking.
No, it's just that the thing is, if we look at the stronger loonie, it signals global confidence, right, in the way Canada's economic direction is, and that's good news for investors that are eyeing Canadian real estate, right? So
Yeah.
again, when we're looking at what we need to help our Canadian economy churn, right? The dollar being stronger, right, naturally is a big part of aiding our real estate in
Right.
Canada. Yeah, yeah. So did you find
70,
out?
72, our Canadian dollar is worth 72 cents.
Okay, so that's 4 cents off. Okay, that's 4 cents off. Okay, so that's good. I mean, that we were down at like 68,
Yeah.
60 some odd cents. It was crazy,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, again, with our dollar bounce back, right? It also for borrowers, I guess it would also mean a little bit more stability also in their mortgage pricing. Would it?
On which side? Come again on that?
For the borrowers, it
Yeah.
might, yeah, it might mean a little bit more stability in their mortgage pricing.
With regards to
A stronger loonie. That's one of the things that they were saying in there, and I didn't know if that was true, but
yeah, again, you got me there.
I don't know. It was one of the economists that were saying, and I can't remember. Was it Royce Mendez? Um, yeah, there was a bunch of these people. Was it Royce or Jack? I think it was Jack Mullaney from J.P. Morgan had said that this well, market watchers may be frustrated. This is ultimate lesson for the bank. Yeah, it was something about from Jack from J.P. Morgan Asset Management that was talking about the dollar, the stronger loonie affecting mortgage pricing, maybe through stock investments and all of that sort of stuff. I'm not sure. I'm not a mortgage guy, Geoff. I just sell homes.
Yeah, and I really try to simplify it. I always tell people your rates are all dictated by economy, right?
Right.
In Canada, and I've said this a million times, if our economy is suffering, we're going to see a lower variable rate.
Yeah.
If the world economy is suffering, you're going to see a lower fixed rate. So when it comes to the Canadian dollar being stronger,
I guess it has to do with the economy, right? Which would then therefore indirectly then maybe.
I always like to speak in very simple terms, and unfortunately, some economists don't speak in those simple terms.
They never do.
And at the end of the day, I think what it comes down to, like for me, when I think about the Canadian dollar, I
Yeah.
just think about what that's going to look like when I'm traveling on the US side, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I take a look at the Canadian dollar, when it's costing me, and I'm just, throwing those out there, when it's costing me $300 to get 200 American dollars, I'm not really feeling too good about going down to the US and doing the shopping. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of people losing confidence in the American dollar. In fact, the American dollar, from what I've been reading, is actually on the decline, and maybe naturally that makes our Canadian dollar stronger, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's so many layers in that, and I don't claim to be an expert in that economy side of things and really understanding. There's some people out there that just love the analytics behind it and really dig down deep into the grassroots. I myself like to keep it simple because again, when you're digging down into the grassroots of things, you're gonna lose 99% of your audience. Right?
100%. Yeah.
So
100%.
so thank you, JP Morgan, for digging deep into the roots. I apologize that we're not quite there yet,
Yeah.
but again, I like that saying. Yes, keep it simple, silly, right? So
Yep. Yeah. I'm with you. And that's why I joked around and said, I don't get that part. I just sell homes and I do have some investment in mortgage companies. Yes, I do. But I again just let my my stock guy put my investments in those types of things and I let him manage that stuff. I don't need to know how 0.44% increase in the loonie affects mortgage pricing.
yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, what does it really? Yes, it matters, but again, to the general Canadian, it doesn't matter, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Keeping it simple is, hey, where are the rates going? Well, take a look at the economy. If we are suffering here in Canada, we're going to see a lower rate. If they're suffering in the US, say, we're going to see a lower fixed rate. So as of right now, when we talk about tariffs, and again, I've had multiple conversations in regards to tariffs. Bruno Volko says poor economic news is good news when it comes to interest rates, right? So this tariffs, and I've had multiple conversations in the last week about them, is if you want to take a look about what's good about these tariffs as far as interest rates go, they're actually going to bring the interest rates down, right? Yeah. Because what's going to happen, again, and I know I've been repeating myself, is that the tariffs are going to create instability in Canada. It's going to create a recession-like environment in Canada. So what happens when you are in a recession? You have to lower your benchmark rate in order to stimulate buying. Likewise, in the U.S., that country right now is also in fear. Take a look at the U.S. stock market, or not the U.S. stock market, but take a look at the stock market. The stock market really is at a low, and what that means is that people are losing confidence in the stock market, taking their money out, driving it into the bonds because it's a safer investment in an unstable time. And then when that happens, again, you're going to see the fixed rates lower. So again, people that are in that uncertainty is like, oh, I'm not going to buy because of the tariffs. Really, it's a great time to buy because you're going to see interest rates continue to go on the decline.
It's funny that you kind of just mentioned that. I know we were talking offline about this experience that I just had a couple days ago with a listing appointment that I had. So just talking about information, how tariffs are affecting the market and all of that sort of the real estate market and all of that sort of stuff. So we spoke 2 pods ago. Gave the market breakdown, right, about how we finished out March in a buyer's market, right? A sales ratio of 11%. So just to recap, right? A balanced market is anywhere from 12 to 20% sales ratio. That means when a property goes up and a property is sold, right? That is your sales ratio, 1 to 1, right? So when you have 10 houses go up for sale and 1 sells, you're at a 10% sales ratio, and that makes it a buyer's market. If you have 10 homes go up and 3 of those sell, now you're at 30% and you're in a seller's market, right? So as we've been discussing, we've been talking about this whole past few months that, Canada's been struggling, it's a buyer's market. We've had a lot of listings go up, but we're not selling them, so buyers have their choices. Sitting and having that discussion with some clients or with some prospective clients a couple days ago, they were speaking with another realtor, and that realtor was again expressing what we know, right? That we're in a buyer's market overall of 11%, right? But when we were sitting down together, I dug deeper with them. And their area, my area where I live, Cloverdale, right, is a 36% sales ratio for the category that they were in, right?
So again, to keep it clear, and I love that illustration, for every 10 homes in Cloverdale,
3.6, 3.5,
which makes it a seller's market.
Seller's market, right? So they all of a sudden, of course, their eyes widened and they said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, so your property now is actually going to have a better chance of selling versus all of the others because people want to move to Cloverdale, right?" Now, digging deep and digging further into their property, because they had a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom townhome, right? They fit into a sales ratio of 17%, right? So brought it back down from a high seller's market back into a balanced market,
right?
But much higher than the buyer's market of 11%. It actually pushed them into a market that's closer to where their property sits in the seller's market, where they're going to get a lot of offers. right? So again, just going back into how these tariffs are causing so much confusion and so much angst in our daily lives, right? It's affected real estate, but it hasn't affected our real estate everywhere. So it just shows, again, just going back to all of the information that we have to deal with. It's very, very important that we're deciphering and really understanding that we're taking in the information we get and then making sure that we're taking the time to decipher it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because, even using yours as an example, there are pockets where it is truly a buyer's market. And
Yeah,
then there's also pockets where it's a seller's market. And again, I think we're all guilty of it. We just hear that it's a buyer's market, so we just assume every pocket
right.
is a buyer's market, right? And that being said, like even in your situation there, those people are also believing and being told that it's a buyer's market, right? And then all of a sudden it handcuffs them from moving forward properly.
Right, right, exactly. And so that's where we want to be careful. And that's why Geoff and I always say we want to make sure that we're giving you all of the best information that we can, because with all of this tariff information that you're gonna that we get on a daily basis, some is gonna be wrong.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Some of it is going to be wrong. And we've gotten into this space now where we call everything misinformation, disinformation, intentionally misleading, da 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 da. I actually like to think on the good side of things now a lot of the times and say, I don't think people are now necessarily trying to mislead people all the time. No. We do have, yes, people outside of our borders trying to influence us with misinformation. That is a true thing. We can't ignore that.
I think, sorry to cut you out, I think there's a pocket of people that do intentionally try to mislead.
That's what I was going to say. Yes. Yeah. 100%.
And I think those pocket of people have a bigger agenda than just simply misinforming.
Exactly. And so what I was going to say, so for us as the majority that aren't trying to misinform people, when we take in this information that we're getting, we have to do our due diligence to make sure we know what's right and do our own education before we then go ahead and tell our next person, so that we don't misinform the next person accidentally, right? We're not maliciously trying to do it.
Yeah.
We're not sorting through the information properly.
And I think it's important to understand too, misinformation isn't necessarily misopinion. My opinion may be different than yours, but that isn't necessarily misinformation.
Exactly.
And I think that also needs to be clear because, again, let's take a look at economists. Yeah. There are a certain set of economists that have an opinion. There's another set of economists that has another opinion. Are they really, and they express their opinion, is that misleading or is that their opinion? And that's where you have to then take a look at the agenda.
Yes. Right.
And again, CBC, what they call that, I forget because it's such an election year. I think they're funded heavily by the Liberal government.
Yeah.
Whatever
government's in place, actually, because they're the arm of the current government. So they're yeah.
So there's people that will say that they will mislead because there's a bigger agenda on who's feeding the pockets.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, that does make sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does. And so but that's why I don't. So that's why I always like to make sure that people don't. Again, because I'm a conservative, right? And this is just not to get off topic. I know we both have an appointment we get to. We are running into an election in 11 days. And so just again, speaking to everybody wholeheartedly, I am saying this actually as an independent voter this year. We have an important election this year. I want everybody to please, this is an actual plea. I want everybody to not vote off of propaganda. Okay. There's one thing I've hated this election more than anything in the world. It has been done by the Liberals. It has been done by the Conservatives, and it is the negative ad campaigns. Just so everybody knows, because I ran in politics, up until 2016 when there was another person that ran for politics in the United States. Negative ads were an absolute no-no in Canada. If you, as a party, ran a negative ad against the opposition, you could be guaranteed you were going to lose. If everybody can dial back their memory, we never ran. There was never a negative ad campaign against any politician in Canada in our politics. Everything was focused on the issues at hand.
Yeah,
okay.
So
that is what I want everybody to go back to. I want everybody to go back to reading the issues. It doesn't matter. The Liberals are not a Trudeau government. Okay. The Trudeau has nothing to do with the Liberals anymore, right? Poilievre is his own man, and he may be willing. He's not going to sell out Canada. Okay, guys, he can't. Right. So again, that's misinformation. So this whole Trudeau nonsense that's going on, the Liberals aren't ran by Trudeau. The whole conservative Poilievre is going to sell Canada to the United States. Look, guys, he can't do it. I want you guys to look at the issues that matter to you all, and I want you guys to listen to both sides, and I want you guys to make an educated choice upon whom the person in your area will do the best for you, not necessarily the leader of the party. So if you believe that the person of the area that you live in is going to do the best job, whether they be NDP, Liberal, Green, Blue, Purple, whatever that platform is, if they are going to do the best job for your party or for your community, then that's the person you vote in, right? No propaganda, because all of the propaganda this election is wrong. All of the negative ads are garbage and wrong. None of them are true. I have been watching these things, and I'm sorry, I am so embarrassed as a Canadian. I am so embarrassed as a former politician, somebody that ran in politics. I'm so embarrassed as what we have become as a Canadian political society. It is brutal. And that is me stepping off of my soapbox now.
Yeah,
but we've got an important decision to make in 11 days.
Yeah, and more importantly, if you don't vote, don't complain.
Yeah, that's it. If you don't vote, you got nothing to say. I don't want to hear you bitching and moaning about this Liberal government doing this, or this conservative government doing that, and you didn't even take the time out to go and vote. You're a ridiculous human being.
Well, that's a little hard, but
no, that's truly how I feel. I'll say that one. Because those people bug me the most, because they are probably the most. They're the ones with the biggest voice that spew the most vitriol and hate, and that's what bothers me the most. So yeah,
I hear you, my man. Well, hey, this kind of went in about 16 different
ways. So, tariffs, elections, but they all are important, right? They all are important. I'll let you wrap this one up, though. I'm
gonna bring this. I'm gonna bring this back in.
Bring it around.
I'm gonna bring this back in, folks. I was gonna say April 16th. Our Bank of Canada had a meeting. We have 8 meetings in the calendar year. This was the first time in 7 meetings that the Bank of Canada decided not to decrease our benchmark rate, or what we call the overnight lending rate. So what that simply means is that your prime rate, the money that the bank lends you and what you're paying interest on, that prime rate has remained the same. The next Bank of Canada meeting is June 4th. And the reason why, to simplify it, that our Bank of Canada decided not to increase or decrease our overnight lending rate is there's just a lot of uncertainty going on outside of our Canadian borders, largely to do with what's going on with Trump's tariffs, right? Are we going to go into a trade war? Are we not going into a trade war? That is yet to be seen. And I think with our upcoming election, we're going to basically get a better sense of direction as far as what that's going to look like as we elect in our new prime minister, right? Yeah. So what this means for borrowers up until that point is that your prime rate, if you're in a variable rate or a line of credit or anything like that, that has a prime rate associated to it, is that your payment is going to remain the same. So anybody that's a variable rate mortgage holder, you're going to see no change in your payment going up and or going down. Okay. What the predictions from the big six banks, and this is actually really important to know, and I'll touch on it briefly. The big six banks believe that our overnight lending rate here by year end is going to drop down to 2 to 2.25%. So keep in mind, right now it's at 2.75. So all big six banks believe that our overnight lending rate is going to drop here within the next 7 months, 8 months, 8 months, or within the next by year end, sorry, not 8 months, by year end. What month are we in right now? April?
April.
So within the next 8 months, that our prime rate is going to drop anywhere from 75 to 50 basis points from where it's at now. Let's see, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is where it becomes uncertain. Am I going to do a fixed rate? Am I going to do a variable rate? There's lots of discussions by that, which maybe we'll bring onto another pod. Probably we're going to see that one come up here within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Should I do fixed? Should I do variable?
So that was going to be funny. That was going to be one of my questions for you within this thing was, should people lock in or float, right? Should people be locking in on a fixed or should they go back? Or because before when we saw like COVID, right, everybody was going into the variable, right? Because it was going down, 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 and then they got hammered, and nobody wanted to do that again. Nobody wants to go through that again. But we'll probably touch on that for another.
And again, I don't think there's a very simple answer to that, because people who were in variable rates, they have PTSD because they witnessed that rise in that such a short period of time, right?
Yeah.
People that chose fixed rates. Again, those are people that are not going to get triggered by what they hear in the media. They're not going to get triggered by what their friends are telling them. They just they want to set it and forget it, to be quite honest.
That's it. Yeah, right? That's it. Because their rate is their rate. They're good.
So again, it really depends on people's belief in what's going to happen here in the next, 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
It's really their belief or their temperament as far as how they handle fluctuations. I keep it simple. There are some people out there that like their steaks medium rare, and there's some people that like their steaks well done. So it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It really is what suits you and how you're going to be able to move forward and move well in that.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to put it.
So we're gonna do a deeper dive into that here within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that hopefully reels it back in, and
I think it does.
I know there was a lot there.
No, I think it does, and that was awesome. I think the last thing that I want to make sure that I last takeaway I want to give, was just what we were saying before, how important it is with your power team, guys. Like this information is all flying at you, right? Rates pause, rates changing, possibly not changing. Now we've got buyers markets, some pockets that are sellers markets. And really it shows you that if you have a goal with real estate, then it is truly, truly important to act, but to act with all of the correct information you can, and to make sure you're getting the correct information, because you might not be in a seller's market. You might be in a buyer's market. You might not be in a buyer's market. You might be in a seller's market. Either way, right? If you're looking for a home and you're looking in a place that's actually in a seller's market position, and your agent has been telling you it's a buyer's market, it means now that you're going to be writing offers that won't win the property that you want, because you're not acting with the correct information. And then if you're selling, right, you might have priced your home wrong, right? Because you haven't, because you're pricing in a buyer's market when you should be pricing in a seller's market. So as I said, guys, look, it's important to make sure that you've got your trusted power team with you, and that they're giving you the right information. So with that being said, oh, and Geoff, we've got a guest coming on. Geoff, who's the guest coming on next week?
We have John Ferguson from Fraser Valley Moving. He's going to give you insight on moving.
Yeah.
Probably the pros and the cons of it and things that you need to know.
I'm excited for that one, people, because, hey, listen, I have my clients all the time asking me, who do I recommend for a mover? And guys, what people forget is movers can really dictate whether it's been a happy time or a bad time, because they are your last link to the home. They're putting all your stuff in it. So if not all of your stuff shows up, you might be a little bit upset. So you want to make sure you're hiring the right movers to complete the job. Everybody, have an amazing Easter. I hope the Easter Bunny brings you a whole bunch of chocolate. I hope you guys have an amazing long weekend. It is sunny. I hope you guys get out there and enjoy that time with your family, your loved ones, or just yourself, whomever you want to. Just make sure you enjoy this weekend. Man, I'm looking outside. I am actually going to take off the afternoon and spend it with the family, because I got some showings to do on the Saturday. So I'm taking some time off this afternoon to enjoy with the family. So everybody, have an amazing long weekend. We will see you all back here next week. And in the meantime, stay empowered, stay informed, and most importantly, Geoff,
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. That's right, baby. Peace out.